And welcome back to Priority One, a great show for you tonight here on the Gateway Television News Network. Joining me now, John Bozarth, the head, I'm going to try to say it, armorer for the St. Louis County Police Department. Did I do it right?
You did it fine.
All right, with all these guns on the table, I don't want to say anything wrong whatsoever. It's the most safe place in St. Louis County right now. We are talking about gun safety coming out of the CCW portion of the show at the beginning. John, we've got guns on the table. I talked about being scared to death of these things. You have them in your house. You have small children around, whether you do or don't. What's the best way to keep yourself safe?
Well, with CCWs on the rise and astronomically going up, there's more and more guns in every home. And the best way to keep them safe is basically to keep them secured. We don't want to have anything unintentional. You don't want to have a surprise, the door opened up and you grabbed a gun from under your pillow or on top of your nightstand, and the next thing you know, you've shot a loved one. So you want to try to take a few minutes to secure them. I've got a few methods here that we can secure revolvers. You open the cylinder and you take a cable. And a cable lock is available from some police departments, but you can buy them at any gun store or sporting goods store. And this requires a key to open it up. You can also use the same type of lock on a semi-automatic. You simply drop the magazine out, so the gun is now unloaded, lock the slide to the rear, and put the cable through the magazine well. This requires you to be awake enough to find the key, unlock the gun, load the gun, and then identify your target. These take a period of time to do so you don't wake up groggily and suddenly start shooting at a loved one that was stumbling down the hall, just looking to use the bathroom or trying to wake you up because you're late for work in the morning.
So with a gun like this, and that's always one of my contentions, is that if you have your gun locked up like this, somebody's in your house, by the time you realize they're in the house, you get to the closet, you get to wherever this is, get the keys, which are separate from this, unlock it, get the magazine or the bullets put in the gun. Is it too late anyway? What would be your advice? When and how would you use something like this?
My advice on this, a cable lock, would be if I want to lock something up where I'm not anticipating the need to use it on a sudden situation. And hopefully we're not going to be using these on sudden situations. This would be more of a long-term storage. I've got a big safe, I've got a closet where I've got the safe in, and I take my guns when I go sport shooting, and I'm going to secure the guns so that the children can't play with them.
And with these locks, there is no technical way that a bullet can be fired out of this gun with that lock through it the way it is. Is that correct?
Absolutely no way can you fire these with that cable lock through there. It prevents the firing mechanism from working.
All right, let's move down the line here and look at some other avenues of safety.
You made mention to the fact that you're home and suddenly you may feel the need that there's an intruder in your home. Hopefully you've heard the intruder, you've woken up, you've gone to your closet, and you've opened up a individual gun safe. A couple of variable on the gun safes are a key lock, and you simply turn it, open it up, and your gun fits inside here. You can keep it loaded and ready to go inside this type of a lock. You would mount this, it's got holes in the back, and you would mount this to a stud in your closet so that you can get access to it should you hear something.
Again, though, the key has to be separate, so there's an amount of time where, if you're like me, I forgot where I put the key.
Exactly. Which is why I prefer the electronic locks. This particular one is one of my favorites. It's programmable. It takes 4 numbers, and you pick the random numbers and you program it into that. This particular one I've got set at a very simple combination, but you would, again, it has holes. You would secure it to a stud in the wall inside your closet. You hear something, you wake up enough to where you're now out of bed, gone to the gun safe, and you have to remember what the code is, and it opens up. You then gain access to your pistol, your revolver. You take care of the situation. Now you're wide awake. You put it back in here. It can be stored in here. It's got foam to protect it. And you close it on the gun, and you just snap it in place, and it locks.
When you look at the things that I am afraid of, and most people who are maybe weary of getting a gun are afraid of shooting a loved one, kids getting their hands on the gun. When you look how many people have guns and they're locked up securely, and the amount of accidents that actually happen like that, they're very few in comparison to the people who are really safe with these guns.
Yes.
Do you agree with that?
I would agree with that. There are very few. And it comes basically from education. You can't just take a CCW class and then go on and say, well, I know what I'm doing with a gun. And you've got to educate everybody in the household. Now, I know you have some small children. If you bring a gun into your household, you have to make sure that, number one, your wife's familiar with where the gun is, how to make the gun safe, and then you have to let the children know. Otherwise, it becomes a magnet. It's the forbidden fruit. The children are going to want to grab it and play with it. You need to educate them. You need to basically unload the gun, show them the gun, explain to them that this is only for the parents to use, let them understand it, and then tell them, real simply, if you find a gun laying around, let somebody know, let a parent know, let your mom or I know, so we can take it and we can secure it so that accidents don't happen.
How do you teach this scenario in a world where a kid cannot turn on the TV or watch a movie without somebody gunslinging, shooting, and making it look so glamorous? Your professional advice.
Well, my professional advice, I have 2 children of my own, and I've sat them down and I've showed them how the guns work. I've taken them to the range when they were old enough and trained them. They know how to shoot a gun. And one of the things that I always talk to them about, when there's a movie on, that's Hollywood. That's not real life. That's not the way things work. And I train them. If you see something, if you have a question, if you want to know more, ask me, ask your mom. We'll be glad to talk to you. We'll be glad to educate you, because education is the best way to prevent an accident.
If you're scared of doing something, should you even attempt to start this process of going through CCW and learning about a gun? Or if you're in that situation, you go, you know what, maybe I'm better off without one? Or can you learn not to be afraid as an adult?
You can learn not to be afraid. My main goal is to let people know, if you're not willing to use the gun in defense of your life or the lives of your loved ones, don't get a gun, because it can be taken away from you and used against you. If you're just scared, but you think that it's about time for you to learn how to use a gun, go to a gun shop. There's a lot of ranges around here that put on classes. Some of them put on 4-hour classes, some put on 2-hour classes. And one of the classes that, now my wife is a good shot, and she's learned to shoot about 30 years ago, and that's amazing because she's only 35 years old. But they put on gun familiarization. Some of them specifically aim them at women, and my wife went to one of those. Gun familiarization classes help you get over that fear of the gun, because a gun is just a tool, and the tool has a good end, the user's end, and the bad end where the accidents happen. And if you know what to do with a gun, you can avoid any problems. And the more familiar you become with the gun, the safer you become with the gun.
On the other side of that, the one thing I also worry about is becoming too laxed with something like that. Okay, well, tonight I'm tired, and you just sit the gun down in the house just because. Accidents happen. That's what my biggest fear is.
And that's something that you just have to make a mental note. You have to train yourself. When you take your car and you park your car, do you lock the car every time? Or do you just leave the keys in the ignition? And some people do leave the keys in the ignition, and that's how cars get stolen, and that's how cars are used improperly. When you come home with your gun, you need to secure your gun. And if you make that mental note to secure that gun every time you come home, accidents will be reduced dramatically.
We talked in the first part of the show that this is an individual decision, a family decision that can have good consequences, protecting yourself, or it can have bad consequences. It's all up to you. What would be your advice to everybody watching tonight who is maybe thinking about this process?
If you're thinking about the process, if you're just not sure, is this for you or not, go to a range. Take a class on firearms safety and familiarization. They will let you rent a gun. They will teach you how to use a gun. They will let you shoot a gun, and that might help you make up your mind.
How much safer, you as a police officer and all the St. Louis County Police Department carry guns on a daily basis? These are secondhand to you guys. But to the average individual like myself, if I'm carrying a concealed weapon, how much safer, as far as feedback, have you heard from people, do they feel with that gun in their possession?
Most people have a tendency to feel safer with a gun in their possession. While they may not actually be safer, they feel safer. And their internal perception creates an outgoing air that a potential criminal might look and say, that guy's too sure of himself.
We talked before we went on the air that this is one of those things where it's a situation, if you pull that gun, you have to be willing to use it. Because if you pull it and somebody else has a gun and they pull it, it could be a gunfight. So you have to be willing, like you mentioned, to use that weapon before you even set foot in to buy one of those weapons. That's a tough scenario. You might feel safe, but when do you pull it?
Well, you pull it when you're in fear of your life or the lives of your loved ones. You don't pull it because somebody's walking across your front yard. You pull it to defend life, and that's the only reason I can think of to actually pull a gun.
At the Municipal Police Academy, St. Louis County Municipal Police Academy, many times have done the FATS machine and definitely made the wrong decision. I would say 7 out of 10 times I've made the wrong decision. A bad decision can be made at any time. Your advice to pulling that gun out?
It's a last resort, and that's all it is. Never pull it out to fire a warning shot. Never pull it out to wave it around to say, hey, look, I've got a gun.
I think many people think that.
Yes.
They see it on television. They think that if they pull their coat back and show you I have a gun, it's going to change the situation.
Exactly, and that's from the Hollywood days. I'm going to pull my gun back. I'm going to pull the coat back, let you see my gun. I'm going to pull the gun out, wave it around. I'm going to fire a warning shot in the air. Those are all bad things. It's a concealed firearm because it's a last resort, and you don't want people to know you've got it until you absolutely have to use it to save your life.
I always joke that I grew up in the era of Miami Vice and Crockett Tubbs, that I want the holster with the leather, with it up under my arm and everything. But I'll be honest, I'm scared. I'm scared.
And you should. And anybody who's got a gun should be scared because a gun can take a life. Improperly used, it could take your own life. That's why if you're going to get a gun, you don't just go out, take the class, and then get your permit. You continue to train. You want to train to where you're very, very comfortable with it and it's second nature to you. And then you want to train some more.
John, we appreciate your time here on the show. It definitely goes so quickly. I could talk to you for several hours about all this, but you had mentioned about stopping by a gun shop. Call your local police department, your local precinct. Talk to some of the officers about gun safety. You guys are always willing to step up to the plate and talk to the citizens about this.
Always. Just stop by and see one of us. We'll be glad to talk to you about it.
John, appreciate your time here on the show once again.
Welcome.
John Bozar, Gary Coxon at the beginning of the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Any more information, you can definitely go to the St. Louis County Police website to find that out. Thanks for joining us tonight here on Priority One. Have a great evening.